Well, I don't look at this as a partisan issue. It's really about how are we spending our neighbors' money.
What we're uncovering is based on what the whistleblowers say, and based on that and emails and different direct evidence, we're building the case. But clearly, they turned a blind eye for it for years.
If we do the quick math, $9 billion in fraud divided by 5.79 million Minnesotans comes out to roughly be $1,500 a person that each hardworking Minnesotan has had stolen from them from the Walz administration.
Things are getting hot in Minnesota, even though it's probably pretty cold here. It's cold everywhere else, but Minnesota mayors aren't whispering anymore. They're not just signing a letter. They're going public, and what they're saying now puts Tim Walz in some real trouble. This is the moment things stop being quiet. This is what happens when frustration turns public. Let's get into it. So we've been covering this situation for a couple of weeks here on the channel. And obviously it started with the massive fraud allegations tied to state-run programs where billions in taxpayer dollars are now under investigation for being misspent or improperly overseen. For years, the state assured the public that finances were stable and safeguards were in place. But as investigations expanded and deficits began to surface, it became clear that oversight failures at the state level were creating a real financial damage to the entire state.
Walz managed to actually set up a fraud investigative committee, but he's about 7 years too late. But it's really disheartening because you actually do see, I can tell you, people across the country are saying, you know, they might not be getting their benefits, whatever it might be. You have veterans that are homeless right now, and whenever that fraud takes place, you're literally taking away from the people that need it the most, the people that have served our country and Americans that have paid into the system.
And now that the damage is showing up where people can feel it the most, in cities and towns, mayors are dealing with tighter budgets, higher costs, and residents demanding answers. So now they're forced to explain why property taxes are rising, why services are being stretched, and why local governments are paying the price for decisions made in St. Paul. These mayors want to keep their jobs too. What makes this moment different is that mayors are no longer keeping those frustrations private. They're speaking publicly because now they see the consequences head on. They see the financial strain coming. They see the trust breaking down within their cities and towns, and they want the people to know and understand where the pressure is coming from. These mayors represent a shift from quiet concern to an open warning. They signal that the fallout from state-level failures from Tim Walz is now landing squarely on local communities. These mayors are no longer hiding behind polite language. They're no longer keeping their complaints behind closed doors. They're going on camera to warn the voters. Then they're saying that consequences are coming. So let's talk about it.
If you're a mayor, you're on the front lines, right? You're out there providing the basic services of police, fire, water, streets. And with all of this egregious fraud and overspending, what's left over to trickle down to invest in our local communities? Our taxpayers are going to make up the difference in the form of property taxes locally. And that's the primary reason why I signed on. We have to get them to pay attention, not to just the fraud, but what's the macro level path forward to fix it and to take a step out of this hole. But we've come from an $18 billion surplus in this biennium, looking forward 2 years to a $2 to $3 billion deficit. Someone's going to have to pay for that. And what I think about for our local folks is what are the trade-offs that are going to be made in the investments in infrastructure, in police and fire, in water, and things that are basic.
This right here is new. This is not careful language. This is not a political hedging here. That's a mayor looking straight at the voters and saying the problem didn't start here. It started at the state level. And mind you, mayors usually don't want to piss off the governor because the governor is the most powerful person in the state. They want money. They want funding. Before it was a quiet concern, now it's a public blame. Once the mayors say that on TV, there is no walking it back. These mayors aren't just criticizing anymore. They're translating the problem for regular people, the people who are voting in their cities and towns. They're saying what happens in St. Paul doesn't stay in St. Paul. Fraud, mismanagement, and budget failures at the state level, they don't just disappear. They land on homeowners, and they notice something important. They're not saying if taxes go up, they're saying when taxes go up. It's going to happen. When you are in a deficit, how do you fix the deficit? Usually, when it comes to a lot of these politicians, the only way they can do that is by raising taxes. That turns this into a political story, into something that people can understand, especially when they see their property tax bill increase.
Well, I don't look at this as a partisan issue. It's really about how are we spending our neighbors' money. And from my chair, there has to be transparency and accountability. Talks about taking responsibility, but I don't hear anything about what we're going to do to fix it. It is what it is. We need to hold those accountables that committed this fraud.
Now, when a politician uses this line that is not about politics, it's very intentional. When the mayor is saying that, they're protecting themselves from the spin. They're telling the viewers and the residents, don't dismiss this as politics. And that's a big problem for Walz. Because the usual defense that Walz used, this is just partisan noise. They're just throwing numbers out. They're just here to sow division.
What we found is these are poorly written and it left openings, and the goal was to get the money out. We'll fix that. But yeah, I'll take accountability for it. But what you're seeing here is you're seeing a weaponization. We'll continue to fix it. They're going to continue to come up with numbers that don't have it there, and it's sensationalized. I don't expect anything different from this administration.
Those things stop working because now you have mayors from different parts of the state all saying the same thing. It seems like it's shared pain, shared concern for what is happening at the state level. And Tim Walz is going to have to take a lot of effort to try to fix all that, even though he says, hey, I can fix this problem. Well, the problem was happening for years, and it looks like it was being ignored intentionally. So now Tim Walz wants to reassure these mayors that everything is going to be okay. They don't believe him.
We're here to help solve the problem. That's what we do. That's what city councils do. That's what mayors do. We solve problems. We don't get to pass the buck off to somebody else.
Right.
And when fraud or anything bad happens in our community, people lose their jobs and people get put on performance improvement plans. We don't see any of that. And we're expected to do that when things come with our state funds. They come with strings and they come with audits. And so, again, we're frustrated.
Now you can see the escalation here. Now the mayors aren't just talking about one scandal. They're talking about the whole direction of the state of Minnesota. Jobs, investment, population. They're saying that this isn't just one bad moment. This is mismanagement and incompetence stacking up. You can't say everything is fine while the people are here, the politicians are here listing statewide decline on camera.
Points that are made here is that really you're looking at like the Minnesota Chamber of Commerce report and some of the challenges that the state is facing, where the state is ranking compared to all of the other states all across the nation, and also making the argument that all of your cities are facing slowed business investment, rising costs.
Well, sure. If you note that Minnesota Commerce report, it's a rolling 5-year report, and we in Minnesota slipped from the middle to top to the bottom third to the bottom fifth. GDP growth 33rd out of 50. Job growth 39 out of 50. Labor force growth 40 out of 50. Median household income 46 out of 50. All across a backdrop of one of the highest overall tax rates in the country, the second highest actually, and the 6th highest income. And so when you look at how are we going to pay for all this, we have to start talking about how do we provide the inputs to the outputs, meaning a robust economy puts pay into the system that allows us to invest in our infrastructure and where appropriate social services and a safety net.
My community is reaching out to me because they're not getting answers from DHS, from other legislators, and they're scared. There's so much unknown for what those programs are. And, as a mayor, we are the front line. We try to help them. And so we've been taking them to our county officials to try to help them at least just get answers to their questions, because there's so much unknown and everything just stopped, which, is part of that process. But there's so much no communication that's happened that those that are receiving those benefits are really scared and, frightened of what's next because they don't know.
Medicaid's been rated.
This line right here is telling you they're looking for some transparency. They're not looking for a speech. They're not looking for sympathy. They're looking for answers. How do they fix this? And when mayors say that publicly, it tells you something important. They don't really believe that the help is coming.
I would say there was talk at the beginning of this current year, but within the last 3 months, this has really gone downhill. And Brian, if we do the quick math, $9 billion in fraud divided by 5.79 million Minnesotans comes out to roughly be $1,500 a person that each hardworking Minnesotan has had stolen from them from the Walz administration and the policies coming out of St. Paul. I think it was hard to talk about Somalis, or for the Democrats to talk about Somalis, but it doesn't matter if you're Somali, if you're African American, if you're white. Fraud is fraud, and if you're stealing fraud, you should be held accountable.
So you see the problem. Once one mayor goes public, others feel safer doing the same. That's what you're watching happen now. That's how pressure builds, not through one explosion, but through steady public frustration. Letters turns into interviews, interviews turn into warnings, warnings turn into voter awareness. That's when leadership problems stop being about theories and about what is actually happening on the ground. This is not the end of the story, not by a long shot. This is just another turn in this epic drama that is the Tim Walz administration. Mayors are speaking directly to the voters. They're warning about the taxes, they're warning about the services, and they're warning about what's going to happen next. And when the people closest to the ground is doing that, leadership failures can't be hidden anymore. They're going to have to answer, and there's going to be some accountability to exactly who allowed this fraud to happen, who tried to punish and scare the whistleblowers. Who's the center of all this? And we're going to find that out very soon. But let me know what you guys think about this story in the comments below. Thank you for taking time to watch this video, and I'll see you guys in the next video.